now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, such a great song. Reminds me of the Planes, Trains, and Automobiles movie.
Yes.
Remember that?
I was trying to think about, oh man, John
Such
Candy.
a good song. Every time you go away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I miss John Candy. He was he was so good in those movies.
So good. I mean, yeah.
Uncle Buck. Remember that?
Yeah. He was also in Home Alone.
That's true.
He was in the band.
But it doesn't get much better than it's a Rogers tradition to watch Planes, Trains, and Automobiles on Thanksgiving.
Yep. It's
Steve
a good
Martin
one.
in there. I mean, that movie
Martin,
is a classic.
I want 4 wheels, right? Anyway, I'll just stop now.
Don't watch the clean version. Watch the adult version.
That's my favorite.
Yeah, exactly. All right, it is time.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Find out what happened over the weekend. Any news this morning? Good morning, Sandy.
Morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. You?
I'm good
Why are you whispering?
because I've got a not so well baby. That toddler, I should say, not really a baby anymore, but yeah.
She'll always be your baby.
Ugh, she was up like a million times last night, so she's
Was it
still
like
kind of
what's wrong?
Was it like a stomach bug?
I don't know what it is. She just
I know what it is. She doesn't want to go back to school.
Well, she doesn't go back until next week, really.
Oh, okay.
So we were kind of going to be winging it this week in any event. So I don't know. She's just not. We had a birthday party yesterday, so I'm kind of wondering if the heat, it's really hot out there. If maybe we overdo it in the heat, I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, she's really not feeling well.
Aww.
She's just still kind of sleeping in, but then none of us got much sleep last night.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Well, best wishes for everyone.
Yes.
Hopefully a little movie this afternoon in bed.
I wanted to ask you this morning about this video you posted. I don't remember when you posted it. It was from over the weekend of somebody that was clearly driving drunk on the roadways.
Oh my God, yes.
That was like one of the scariest videos I think I've ever seen.
I mean, we've all seen it though. Like not that video. I think just in general on
just seen it live.
I haven't seen this. This is the first I'm hearing about it.
I mean, that car nearly caused an accident a few times in that video. I'm sure, and I know whoever was filming it was probably thinking the same thing, and they wanted to make sure they had evidence of that, the way that person was driving. Did anything happen?
Well, they actually called the police. A lot of people on Instagram were like, why didn't they call the police?
Yeah.
You know, they did.
Okay.
But as you know, sometimes the police takes a minute to show up. So they did contact the police, and they actually said that what happened was the person turned down like a dark road. So they're not really sure what happened after that, but they did follow them for, it was almost 2.5 minutes worth of footage. So
I mean, it looks like you can see the license plate in that video. Can you?
I think if you zoom in, like if you had the ability to zoom in, you probably could.
Is that something that RCIPS can do after the fact and be like, hey, listen,
I don't see why not, because years ago they announced they could do it with the blue spot. So I would think with this kind of evidence, they probably had some questions to ask. But you know, maybe they need like that real-time blood test to prove they probably couldn't charge him with DUI, but they could probably charge him with reckless driving. Because I think the DUI, you probably need the test results to say the person was actually under the influence.
And you could be like, hey, that wasn't me. I wasn't driving.
Yeah.
Who was driving? I don't know.
You know, when you report like drivers like that, you're meant to call 911, right? Yeah. I just still find that you can't just call a traffic like department number. Like we're using.
They should have somebody on standby. Like, you know, they should be out on patrol. Hey, we've got looks like a drunk driver in so and so area, and then you know they roll in.
The one thing that surprised me is that during that entire time, you didn't see any police on the road. Like I'm like,
awful lot of cars. I don't know what time of day it was, but there were a lot.
I mean, it was at night, but you see a number of cars actually passing by at one point. It looks like they first come into the King's like roundabout, and there are tons of cars like lined up on the side of the road in that area. I'm just guessing based on kind of what I see. So yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that you never see any police, because that stretch right there after King's Roundabout is a huge like racing track, you know, early in the morning. So you would think police would be, you know, in that area Friday night, Saturday nights, and even Sunday nights at least. So I was a little bit surprised that there was no police presence at all. I mean,
we've said it before. It's a huge revenue stream for the Cayman Islands government to hand out tickets.
Yeah,
and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
You know, especially if that, you know.
So there were a couple, it's interesting that you should mention that video, Blake, because there were a couple videos this weekend that really went viral. That was obviously one of them. And the other one was these kids mistreating a Hecate. Now, I actually didn't watch the full video of that one because I can't
mistreating
even.
No. Mistreating a what?
Hecate, a little turtle.
The little baby looking turtles.
Huh.
Yeah, so that one truly went viral on Instagram alone with over 11,000 views. And I didn't personally, like, I watched the first couple seconds of it and I could see where it was going. So I personally stopped watching it. So I don't actually know how it ends, but I know that it's extremely disturbing because every single comment, except for one guy, and I think he's probably having a special extra kind of sauce. He's like, oh, they're just being kids and kids do this to animals all the time. I'm like, no, kids actually.
No, they don't.
When you harm animals as kids, you grow up to be a serial killer.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, have you ever watched any documentaries on serial killers? That's
no. I mean, I know this for. Yeah, this is a fact that's one of the markers of someone who is psychotic.
Yeah,
is someone who harms animals, someone who bedwets. There's 3 things, and there's a third one that I can never remember what it is. But definitely harming animals as a young child is a trait that you never want to see your child or any child engaging in. And you should probably get that child professional help if you see them finding this kind of behavior entertaining or funny. And so
also you have to teach your children it's not funny in the first place, because kids will still think things are funny that definitely
Yeah.
So
Now,
if they still enjoy it after you're like, no, that's really bad, then there's like, okay, time to get help.
Now, insects is where I draw a line. I'll kill a lot of insects.
Depends on which insects.
Ants.
Yeah. And I mean,
spiders.
We need bees.
I don't kill bees.
Spiders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story from back when I was a child. Because I grew up in the
Where's it going?
Way back here now.
I grew up in Virginia, and hunting was kind of a big thing.
Yeah.
You still did that.
I'm from Idaho.
I had a BB gun. I was like the kid on a Christmas Story. I was like, I wanted this BB gun for Christmas. I got it. Mm-hmm. And so one day I was out just shooting at things, and as you do with BBs, and I shot a bird that was in a tree. And I felt so bad that I killed this bird that I buried it in a little box and did a little ceremony. And then I never.
And you buried your BB gun with it. You're like, that's the last time.
I never went hunting or shot or killed another animal after that when I was a kid. I was probably 7.
That's my hard thing. Cause like, a lot of my aunts and
It
uncles
just affected me so badly.
No, it is.
I was like, I can't, this isn't for me.
No, they would bring home like deer and stuff.
Yeah.
And yes, they'd be using all the meat and everything. Yeah. But it's for me, I'm like, I can't be a part of this. And then my mom would like obviously hide the meat in other meat with us because that's what people.
I'm fine eating the meat. I just don't want to be the one.
I can't know. That's the thing is I don't want to know how it gets from there to here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'll eat plenty of hot dogs. Don't tell me what's in it. Exactly.
I feel like someone from PETA recently. Never mind. I'm not going to say it out loud. Because no, you just don't want to think about what's in the hot dog. Yeah.
But those are the things that you learn in life, and you're like, and then you move on to be a better person.
Yeah, that's sad to hear, though. I don't want good heads up on me not watching that video now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is that up on CMR?
Sorry?
Is that on CMR, that video?
Yeah. It's it's not like I said, I could not even bring myself to watch the entire thing after I saw how it started. And I'm like, oh God.
Did they kill this turtle or no? Do we know?
Sorry?
Did they kill the turtle?
I don't know. Like based on the comments, I did read a substantial number of comments. It looks like, people were just disgusted by, what they were doing. So I don't know if the turtle actually survived the abuse or not, but definitely I believe that Hecate is actually protected. I think they're protected. So this also brings up a lot of questions about whether or not these kids may have been committing an illegal act. And so I'm hoping that their parents really have a firm word with them. At least one of the kids in the video, his face is clearly seen. So I think people know exactly, who this kid is. And meaning that hopefully his parents now know who he is as well.
Yeah.
And they rein this behavior in because it's not good.
Yeah. All right. Well.
Anything else from the weekend?
So there was a lot actually going on over the weekend, and quite a bit in regional news. Of course, Hurricane Ida hit the Gulf Coast of the U.S. with a vengeance as a Category 4 storm.
Yeah,
it's just shocking that she was just a tropical storm when she was passing us a couple days ago.
I know, and
she quickly picked up speed to Cat 4 storm, and was
really
actually more powerful than Katrina when she hit, which is crazy.
Yeah, nearly a Cat 5. It was the upper end of Cat 4. It was almost Cat 5.
Yeah. She was pushing.
It was 7 miles per hour away from being a Cat 5.
Yeah, exactly. She was actually pushing Cat 5.
Cat 5.
Yeah, that's like nothing.
Yeah.
And then the irony of it is it's the exact day 16 years ago that Katrina hit that same area.
Yeah.
So it was just like, wow. The coincidental timing is quite something.
I remember Hurricane Katrina. That was not a nice storm either.
16 years ago, right?
That's to the day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
In the same area.
So I think they were hopeful that certain things like the levees and stuff would be a little bit stronger now because they have been rebuilt and reinforced after the lessons learned from Hurricane Katrina. So I guess we'll see. And then the mayor in Honduras was arrested in this big cocaine bus.
Wow.
So that's making news around the region and in Cayman in particular, because there are rumors that he has connections with people in this jurisdiction as well.
Oh, wow. Okay. You going to name them later on the show?
Yeah.
Well, I think some of it is a matter of public record.
Oh, is that right?
Business with people, yes.
Oh,
So, he apparently has some kind of ferry company there. He has a number of companies, lobstering, and they're business people in the Cayman Islands who've done business with him. Now, that doesn't mean that they're obviously involved in that side business, but of course, it's raising a lot of eyebrows in the community where people are wondering, because his businesses are probably a cover for some of the illegal activity that he was into.
Wow.
Yeah.
When I was watching, I'm sure we'll talk more about it over the next couple of weeks. They've started to do some of the coverage for the 20th anniversary of September 11th. It's just coming up.
Oh, that's coming up already. Wow.
20 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's hard to believe.
There's this documentary on CNN that is unlike any other one I've ever seen before. And it was just, you forget what craziness it must have been like in New York City.
Well, and
not just
Spike
New York
Lee
City,
is doing like all about the conspiracy theory because he kind of still believes it. Like, how did the jet fuel melt the steel in the World Trade Center? So he's got, like, documentaries coming out about like the conspiracy. It's like,
I can't wrap my brain around conspiracy theorists. I mean, I saw someone actually posting that even now the Spanish flu was a conspiracy theory. I'm like, oh yes, way back 100 years ago, they were like fabricating that in a lab. I just can't even. These people just blow my mind on a daily.
Too much time in their mind going on.
There was this documentary crew that was following this New York Fire Department captain around, like doing a documentary on something, and they were at some like gas leak, potential gas leak. This was before it all happened. Like, it was very benign. Like, it was like, this is not going to be like a really great documentary. It's kind of a boring, like, they rolled in and they
on September 11th.
Yeah, on September 11th that morning, and they're all standing around, and you hear this plane, and they're rolling cameras, and the camera pans up, and it actually catches the plane going into Tower 1, and they're all like, "Holy crap!" They were 14 blocks from the World Trade Center, and you could see them in the background, and you could see the plane. They actually caught it on film, and then they followed this guy and his fire department crew through the whole thing. And anyway, there's more of the series tonight and through this week, but that was like, you're just like, wow. And when they got into the bottom of the tower, you could see that there was a lot of destruction already on the ground floor, and you're like, why, if it was so far up, did all this destruction happen down on the main floor?
Where are you going with this, Blake? No.
The fuel from the airplane went down the elevator shafts of the tower.
Sense, yeah.
And was this huge explosion all the way down to the ground floor, and it was like just had a big blowout on the ground floor. And there were people on the ground floor when the plane went into the building that immediately died from just the explosion that happened from the plane fuel.
Yeah, because that's the thing. It's not each floor is not sealed. There's you've got the elevators,
down the elevator
the stairs,
shafts.
all that stuff.
Yeah, and that
the
thing
stairs are probably better because the doors close.
And that was part of the reason why they chose planes that were flying to Los Angeles from Boston, because they were just completely full of fuel.
Yeah,
and they turned them around so they had more impact. It's
weird to think it's 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I know, it's crazy.
Anyway, that is coming up, and there'll be a lot more. You'll see a lot of that on TV. The 20th anniversary of September 11th. So
yeah, wow.
We actually will not be with you tomorrow.
Okay,
I believe, because we are going to be broadcasting live from Subway Anderson Square tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
For their 30th anniversary. They've been on island 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're our show sponsor, so we're doing a live broadcast tomorrow.
So anyone that goes by can come and say hi to us.
Yeah.
Out in a place, and not actually, because obviously usually we're here in the studio, so you can come out in and maybe join the show. Why not?
Yeah, unless we figure out some sort of way to do it technically, we'll probably won't be on with you tomorrow morning.
Well, the ease of what we do here is you can even join from a mobile phone.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it after your show.
Figure this out. I'm not that technically
Sounds good, guys.
All right. Catch CMR right now on Facebook and YouTube, and we may or may not see you tomorrow.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
You too, bye.
All right, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining the program. Good morning, Miss Donna. Olivia's here. Diamond Princess Sapphire. I saw her at the grocery store the other day when I was out and about in preparation for Tropical Storm Ida. I went to Foster's countryside, which was crazy that day, just doing some filming. So I'm using my indoor voice today, really kind of soft voice. Because in case you're just joining the program, my daughter was not feeling well last night. I don't know what it was. Like I couldn't get her to really explain to me what was going on. I'd be like, what's hurting? Are you in pain? And she was just like, not feeling well. So I woke up no less than 5 times last night after going to bed after 1 o'clock in the morning, which is absolutely crazy. The only thing that is making me somewhat functional this morning is because I took a nap yesterday afternoon because I was so tired after after we went out to this party. And I find that, we had our party outside, and August is just like a super brutal month for the heat. So I think she probably exhausted her little self a little bit too much in the heat, and I tried to like myself sit down and just like take a minute, because afterwards I could really feel the impact of the heat on me. So I was able to nap afterwards, and I don't think she ever took a nap yesterday, which normally she doesn't nap. Like she's never been a napping child. Like it's the most bizarre thing. I know a lot of babies are like easy to put down for nap time, but she's never been that child for us. At school, they had her in a bit of a routine, and so she would like they make all the kids nap at school for a substantial amount of time, right? When she was at Tiny Tots, but she's just not a napper. And normally the only time you'll get her, even if she's like super exhausted, the only time you'll get her to sleep is if she's in a car. In the motion of the car, it kind of puts her to sleep. So when she's a baby, she'd like nap, like going to and from daycare. But on weekends, like if you try to get her to nap, oh gosh, it just wasn't happening. So she didn't take a nap yesterday. And I think that it could just be a combination of heat and being overtired. But literally, she woke up no less than 5 times. And so I gave her a little bit of like baby Tylenol as well, because I wasn't sure if she was like having an earache or if there was something a bit more going on. So the plan was we were actually going to be together this week anyway, because her school doesn't start back until the 3rd, which is Friday. So they were supposed to start back tomorrow, I believe, but then there were some delays because of the previous storm causing some damage, and the school was undergoing some renovations in addition to that. So it's just, so we were going to have, she was going to basically come to work with me all week because we don't have a nanny. We just kind of make it work. And so last week she did an art camp, so that was fine. And then the 2 weeks before that, while her school was out, we did have a babysitter like during the day kind of here with her, and that had worked out pretty well. But yeah, it's just, yeah, I think Carol napping is good for everybody. She just is not like a napper really. So she was very miserable last night. Ugh, and every time I would get up, I'd look at the clock. It was like I went to bed after 1, and then it was like 2:30, and then 3:30, and then 4:30, and then 5. Like almost every hour, I felt like I was getting up. So good morning to Anne Marie. Good morning, Marshall. So I'm expecting her. She's still sleeping, and I'm expecting her at some point to wake up and come knocking on the door and be like, Mommy, what are you doing? So she's aware that I have a show in the mornings, and she kind of knows what that means. That's like quiet time while I try to do my show. So we'll see. I'm hoping she just sleeps in the whole time, right up until the end of the show. We'll see how she feels. She should be tired enough, trust me. But even in the mornings, like she doesn't really sleep in late. And then on weekends, she's up like at the crack of dawn. I'm like, can we sleep in on weekends? She's like, oh no. Marshall is here. Dawn says, good morning, Miss Sandy and everyone. I'm out of tea. Fill my CMR mug to the brim. We got a lot to talk about. We really do. Good morning, Sonia. Thank you so much for that. Miss Carla Rodriguez is here. Shannon, thank you. She says, don't show the Hickory video. Yeah, I wouldn't. Like I said, I didn't actually watch the video myself. And so some people have said to me, on a video like that, can you put like a little warning that it's sensitive content? Now, I don't know how Instagram does it, right? But sometimes they do like a film over something. And I don't know how they determine what like what gets a film. Like they'll tell you, graphic content or whatever. But there's no way to actually put that on yourself, which I think is kind of weird. Like I wish there was a way when I post something for me to say to Instagram or Facebook, this is adult only graphic content or whatever, warn people. So I can put it in the comment section, but if you have like autoplay or whatever settings on, your Facebook on your phone, for example, it's still going to start playing. So I don't know how to activate that filter, and I've looked it up, and it's not something, it appears from what I've seen, that a person can actually do. It's something that Instagram will put on for you, which is like I said, super weird. Like you think they would put that in the control of the person who's uploading the content, right? But they don't. So I can only put it in text, I suppose, at the end of the day. So Carol says that's how Jeffrey Dahmer got started. And listen, I've read a number of very interesting things over the years in relation to serial killers. And it's definitely one of the things that has been studied about serial killers. So there's a number of early warning signs for serial killers that a lot of people might have those traits, but combined with certain things in life, I suppose, it definitely should make you concerned. So one, of course, is antisocial behavior. Arson was a third one that I was thinking about. So a lot of serial killers start out as arsonists. And it's just really, really interesting. But you can go through like a long list of kids who were infatuated with pyromania as children and then turned out to be hardcore serial killers. That David Berkowitz guy, he was the son of Sam killer, for example, was one of them that was really infatuated with pyromania. But one of the earmarks of this is definitely people who like to torture small animals. And they've actually said that this is one of the strongest warning signs of antisocial and psychotic behavior and a possible predictor of whether or not your child is going to be a serial killer. And so children who torture or kill small animals like squirrels, birds, cats, and dogs, Hickeys would fall into that category, without showing any remorse are likely to be sociopaths. And so I think the parents who their children in this video should take note, folks. You might have a little bit of issue on your hand. So, this is one of the things. And Carol mentions Jeffrey Dahmer, and he was known to bike around the woods as a child, collecting dead animals to dissect. And he even killed and dismembered his own puppy. So, yes, that's definitely one of them. And, what was the other one that I mentioned earlier? There's that one. Bedwetting is also an indication of a child having some issues. And, a lot of them tend to be a little bit what they call bright normal range in terms of their IQ. Not really super normal, but some of them are very, very organized. So that's a very interesting thing. But they use their intelligence, of course, for all the wrong reasons. Yeah, just crazy. But anyway, it's not a good look. And I mean, I saw a lot of people saying if that was my child, I'd be beating them. And I think this is our Caribbean culture coming out, which as you guys know, I don't believe in beating children. I used to believe that because that's how I was raised and I was a product of that. And over the years, the research that I've seen and that I've immersed myself in, I'm not a believer in beating children. Like, I don't think that works, first of all, in terms of the long-term goal. I think that, yes, if anybody is under physical um, constraints or, physical pressure, they will do whatever you tell them to do in that moment. So if you hit a child and you say, stop it right now, of course, the force of that is going to, in most instances, make them stop whatever offending behavior they're engaged in. Does that lead to long-term reflection on the poor behavior and remorsefulness and, remediation, all those sorts of things? No, I don't. I'm not of that opinion. So I read a lot of the comments, and a lot of people are like, just beat them. That's going to solve the problem. And I said, right. So a child who already has tendencies towards violence, the solution is to show them more violence. Not so sure that I'm following the logic in that situation. So, yeah, good morning to Miss Morna. How are you? Miss Morna is tea ready. Miss Marjorie says that she called the police saying that someone was littering, and the man told her he had better things to do. I couldn't believe my ears. The police said he has better things to do than enforce the laws of the Cayman Islands. That's crazy. Did you provide him with information? Like, was there a license plate number or any meaningful information that you could provide to him? Wow. I think no matter how big or small the offense is, you never expect a police officer to say that they simply don't care about enforcing the laws. I mean, they enforce traffic laws, which sometimes are like the most ridiculous, not ridiculous. I mean, there's still laws, but it's like, oh, you parked over a yellow line or whatever. They're certainly going to enforce that against you. So why wouldn't they enforce littering laws? There's a $500 fine for littering. And honestly, I think that it should be increased to $5,000 because there's too many people who, just don't even take that law seriously. So it's unfortunate that that happened. Now, listen, I get phone calls sometimes where police don't respond in the way that people think that they should. And, I have, on their behalf, contacted the police commissioner myself. And I said, listen, this person called the police station. Like one instance recently, this was someone in West Bay, the person was exposing himself in public, and so the concerned adult called and said, listen, I have children in the area who are seeing this behavior. Certainly this is lewd and whatever. And I didn't really fully comprehend if he was exposing himself for the sake of exposing himself or if he was actually trying to do something else. Like I couldn't really quite figure out the reason why, but that wasn't the most important thing. It was like, you don't expose yourself in public. That's indecent exposure. And so when she called the West Bay Police Station, their response was kind of like, oh, whatever, nothing would happen to him sort of thing. And this person was like, that can't be. And I think what it was is they told her that it wasn't an offense. And she was like, exposing yourself in public isn't an offense. And I was like, what? So again, just leading people to question how much understanding do the police themselves have of the laws that they're trying to enforce. So I did reach out to the police commissioner and I said, listen, this is what's going on. This is a complaint that was made. The response of your officers was kind of like, it's not a big deal. And this woman is really like, are you kidding me? Like this has to be taken more seriously. So I do think the commissioner was keen to speak to the officers that were engaged in advising this woman that nothing would have been done about this situation. It can be frustrating when officers don't seem to care about the laws or I think in some instances, they don't even know what the laws are. Very, very concerning. So what I say all of that to say this, Miss Marjorie, is sometimes what you need to do, if you don't get the appropriate response from a particular officer, is you need to hang up the phone, because sometimes you just don't even, at that point, you want to talk to that officer anymore. You hang up the phone and you call back the receptionist and ask to speak to the superintendent or the inspector on duty. So someone more senior who hopefully cares a little bit more than the beat officer that you just spoke with. And you don't drop it. You don't just let it go. Right. And then if you don't get a response from them, folks, there are, contact email numbers or email addresses for the RCIPS that you can reach out to them further about. So that's what I would recommend, is don't just let things like that slide, because that person is going to remain in the police force and God knows probably get promoted up the ranks. So good morning to Wee Wee. Good morning, Miss Sue. Miss Darlene says that she's been watching that documentary as well. Very interesting. I hardly get to watch TV anymore. So things like this, I kind of miss unless someone specifically tells me, oh, Sandy, you got to watch this. So Darlene, I'm curious to know, how long has that documentary been on for? I didn't even realize that this was the 20th anniversary of September 11th already. And isn't it ironic that it is the 20th anniversary? And then here we are coming up on the Taliban taking it all back. And basically, they're going to do exactly what they want to do. I have an interesting video I might play later on in the show about the Taliban and what people think has gone wrong with that whole entire situation. How the US handled it basically, and why they've made no inroads after 20 years and trillions of dollars and countless lives lost. It's a very, very sad situation. Good morning, Mr. Bishop. Thank you so much. Omeria is here. Thank you, my darling. Kizzy, good morning. Anne is here, says fritters and coffee and CMR. Do you put anything on your fritters? I'm curious how people eat fritters. Like some people do jam and like butter. Some people make a fritter breakfast sandwich. I never appreciated the value of a fritter breakfast sandwich until during Hurricane Ivan, like after Hurricane Ivan, I think it was. I had a neighbor across the street, Mr. Scotty's son, Durbin. And Durbin, I don't even know how I saw him eating it one day, but he had this fritter sandwich. I'm like, what is that? And he's like, you've never had a fritter like breakfast sandwich? And I was like, no, is that a thing? He was like, yes, that's a thing. And he showed me with, I think it had, I want to say a fried egg, jam, and something else. But he's like, this is how you do it. And I was like, was it fried egg or scrambled? No, I think it was scrambled egg. And I was like, wow, this is actually a really good combination. So he introduced me to it a couple times. I made it myself. And then I discovered that I didn't have to really make it all the time, because Miss Karita, remember Miss Karita in her restaurant? Oh my gosh. Where is Miss Karita, by the way? She actually was making them. I was like, whoa, they were so delicious. So every once in a while I'd pop in to have one of her breakfast sandwiches. Delicious. Definitely worth it, folks. So yeah, what's on your fritter this morning? Very, very interesting. There was Miss Teen this weekend as well, in case you guys missed that. Beautiful young lady won Miss Teen. Somebody just mentioned that Miss Karita's fritter specials were the best. Yeah, I think I kind of discovered them a little bit late, but I probably made up for the lost time by eating my fair share of them. And then she, quite interestingly enough, moved to, remember when she was in town close to the court's office? And so then she was kind of like close to when I would like have to park and go to law school and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, this is a perfect location, Miss Karita. I loved it. Because originally she was on Eastern Avenue, right? In that plaza where Bananas is, I think. Anyway, this young lady won Miss Teen over the weekend. Quite a pretty young lady, actually. She's got a very nice face, I must say. And then I've heard, I don't know who she is, but I've heard she's got a great personality to go along with it, which is fantastic because obviously that is what you want in a beauty pageant. It's not just about external beauty, it should be about what's on the inside as well. I don't even know how many contestants they had with Miss Teen. Somebody messaged me on Saturday before the pageant, and they said, "Hey, Sandy, is anybody going to be carrying the pageant live?" And I said, "I don't think so." And they were like, "Why not?" And I said, "I don't know." What I find with this particular pageant, now this is kind of an interesting thing, is that they don't seem to engage the media a whole lot. They just do their thing. So, they, I guess, just run the pageant. And I don't ever, and, forgive me if I've misspoken here, but I'm like 99% sure of this. I've never seen a press release or anything come out from the organization. So I don't know if they don't have a PR person or whoever's in charge of PR just doesn't have us on their list. So maybe we never get anything from them. I don't really know. So the most that we can do is once we find out, who the winner is. And of course, listen, here on CMR, we keep track of what's happening on social media. So, we do watch out for those types of things. But I don't know anything about the pageant through the official pageant channels. I just know because people are saying to me who might be in attendance and so on, they're like, "Oh, this young lady won, and this is her name, and this is who her mom is," and that sort of thing. So that's the only reason why we know anything about it. It's not that we get information like, "Oh, the pageant's happening on this date," or "This is what's going on." So I kind of feel like maybe the committee members, and I think it's run by, is it Rotary Club or something? It's run by some nonprofit, right? So I'm of the opinion that maybe they need to step up their PR efforts just a little bit and send out stuff. One guy was like, a lot of older people wouldn't be able to attend the pageant, but they would love to watch it. So if it was live stream, they would be able to do that. I don't know what their thoughts are. Like some people feel like for events, they don't want to live stream it because people are not going to attend. And I don't find that that's true. I think the people who are going to attend would attend anyway. And you would still make, because obviously they're trying to, I guess, make money, right? You would still make money in the event. But legitimately, there are tons of people who wouldn't attend no matter what and unable to. And you kind of lose out on those people seeing your event, participating, at least as a viewer of the event, and also supporting it because you get a lot of goodwill out of people knowing what's happening with your different nonprofits and your different events like Miss Teen and so on. So it's a little bit unusual. Miss Kayman invites us to like all of their stuff, which is fantastic. But yeah, Miss Teen, I never hear from them. Shari says, "Good morning, Sandy. She's probably dehydrated. That can cause insomnia." I do kind of feel like she didn't probably drink enough water yesterday, given the heat, so maybe. I'm kind of hoping it's something very, very simple, overtired, maybe a little bit of dehydration. We can certainly solve that problem today, and not that she's actually coming down with anything. So Richard, good morning. Good morning, Mitzi. Amina is here. She says, "You're right. One of the earliest signs includes desensitization to violence. And a lot of that accumulates from beginning with animals. And if you're okay with that, they may progress." There's a whole nature versus nurture thing when it comes to psychotic and, antisocial behavior in people. Being a charmer, being able to deceive people, a lot of these guys were very likable. So, for example, Ted Bundy, he was not only physically a decent looking guy, according to most people, but he was also very, very charming. One person observed, I'm just reading something online here, that he could completely fool you. This author, Anne Rule, who's the author of the best-selling Stranger Beside Me, about her experiences with Bundy, someone that she considered a friend, said that, he had on this mask that was perfect. Um, and she felt like you can never really be sure how much you know about someone. So lots of personality traits, but lack of remorse or guilt is obviously very, very concerning. Egocentric and grandiose is another personality trait. Lack of empathy for people. Deceitful and manipulative. I feel like I'm describing some people I know right here in the Cayman Islands. Shallow emotions. Ugh. Impulsive. Poor behavior control. Oh my gosh. Yes. Lack of responsibility. And of course, early behavioral problems, which is part of what we're talking about with the bit about the children. So very, very interesting, Mina. Louis says, good morning. His mug is full of tea. Let's get it. Good morning to Paula. Carol said she would take them directly to a therapist. And I do hope that that is part of their response to this situation, not just beating them. Because, that, like I said, hardly solves anything. Carlos says, know the difference between murder and manslaughter. I'm not sure what we're talking about there. Alba, buenos días. ¿Cómo estás? Estoy bien. Gracias. Darlene, buenos días. Darlene says, Sandy, I stand to be corrected, but I think you can make a citizen arrest for littering. I feel like you could make a citizen arrest for most offenses, but no one in Cayman ever does. So I don't know. I think that would require citizens to, number one, understand how a citizen arrest is done. Because remember the guys who arrested, I use that term loosely, they held the wannabe liquor store robber back a couple of years ago that was in Grand Harbor until the police arrived. That's effectively a citizen's arrest, and that was undertaken by some guys who stopped him as he was trying to run out and rob the liquor store. So I feel like any sort of offense, you could undertake a citizen's arrest and hold someone or detain someone until the police actually arrived. But yeah, I don't know if I wouldn't, the problem with that, someone else said something this weekend too. They were like, oh, this person could have, I don't know if it was that drunk driving video, but there was some other thing and people were like, oh, they could have just jumped out and helped the situation or stopped the offender. And I said, a lot of people are not necessarily comfortable with that because they don't know how people might react during a citizen's arrest or somebody trying to intervene other than the police. And the fear is that this situation could turn violent in a quick amount of time with other people, which are, now innocent people trying to get involved. So sometimes people just don't want to get involved at that level, Ms. Darlene. But I think when the police are contacted, the very least that should happen is that they do something about it if a law is being broken. So Ms. Sue says she doesn't believe in beating children either. She says it's abuse, it's more violence. There's other ways to punish them, and ask police to come and warn them usually can work. Yes, well, we saw how that turned out recently, taking a disabled child to the police station to be warned. Didn't quite work out all that well. That family has said that the police are not being honest in what they're saying. So we're going to get some more details on that. Good morning, Tracy. Good morning, Erica. Buenos dias. Corrine is here. She said, yes, Miss Carita had the best fritter sandwiches. Everton, good morning. Yes, it could just be heat exhaustion. And you know what, too, Everton? Sometimes as adults, we can obviously, we're bigger and, a little bit stronger and all that sort of stuff. We can handle the same heat conditions better than children. And we don't always appreciate the toll that it's taken on little ones. Their body is not the same and they don't have the same amount of electrolytes and all these different sorts of things to sort of self-regulate. So I wouldn't be surprised if it could be as simple as something like that. Um, So Everton says, I love politics and tell you the truth. I'm a registered Democrat and I love the Democratic Party. And so I will defend them to the fullest. Is that in relation to 9/11 and the handling of that and what's happening now? Kizzy, thank you. Leos and Lions Club. So they're the ones who put on the Miss Teen pageant. Everton, I'm not so, as a person who's lived in the US for 15 years, and I see Democrats versus Republicans, whatever, I'm not so bought into either party. I'm not so vested in either party, if I can put it that way. But I do understand why Americans would be and why you grow up with supporting a particular ideology which you associate with either the Democrats or the Republicans. I'm like a free thinker. I must say that I probably lean more towards the Democratic side for sure, because of a lot of the policies that they put in place. So good morning, Alice. John Henry is here. Daisy, good morning. Brat Carib Gardens. Hey, Quincy, how are you? You logged in with another account today. How is Jamaica? Speaking of Jamaica, Jamaica had a lot of flash floods last week. Did you guys see this as a result of that storm? It's so crazy because we were so incredibly thankful that we didn't get, a lot of the impact of that storm. But I got to tell you that, whoa, it just like ravished Jamaica, in fact. Jamaica got a lot of, I think we shared this video over the weekend, they got a lot of flash floods. And it wasn't even that close to Jamaica. I felt like it was closer to us. So we were incredibly fortunate. Good morning, Leslie. Odette is here. Anna, citizens' arrest could be used against corrupt police officers, people's power. Well, he was probably at the station just having a coffee and a donut break and not wanting to move. So I'm not sure that you could go there and make an arrest at the police station, but that would certainly be very, very interesting. So Quincy says that he's celebrating 5 years with his Brack Carib Gardens and being on air this weekend. Do you have is it a regular show, Quincy? Because one thing I find with programs being on air and that sort of thing, you've got to be very, very consistent so that people know, okay, it's every weekend at such and such a time, or I'm not sure what your schedule is for that, but you can certainly share that with us. Leslie says, I used to get heat and sunstroke when I was a small child. It was hard for adults to understand how to take care of me. That is a very serious thing, Leslie, and I'll tell you why, because once I suffered an episode from it that landed me in the emergency room myself as an adult, and I didn't know what it was. So this was years ago. I want to say this was probably around 2009 or before. And I only remember that because Pastor Al Ebanks came and prayed for me in the emergency room, and he was just going around praying for people and stuff in the ER at the hospital. And it was during an election cycle. And that's how I also remember it, because I was out the day before putting out yard signs. So then that day I just started to feel really, really bad. And I was like, I think I started to throw up and I was getting dizzy and it was like really crazy. And so I ended up going to the emergency room and they were doing all these kind of tests. And of course, the first thing they start to think, okay, maybe something's wrong with your heart. They're going to do like cardiac related stuff. And they're like, all of those are fine. The enzymes, like if you've had a heart attack, you produce certain types of enzymes. They're like, nope, that seems okay and whatever. And then they were saying to me that on the blood work side, one of the things came back that was really elevated was something called, I think it's called creatine or something. And so they said to me, are you in the gym working out? And I kind of laughed at them because I was like, listen, look at me right now and ask me if I'm in the gym again. I was like, no, I'm not in the gym. And they said, well, the reason why they're asking is this particular supplement. A lot of people take it who are like working out and going to the gym and that sort of thing. So creatine, I think is what it's called, was high, and that can lead to like kidney issues and all sorts of stuff. And I thought, well, what would make that high? And they're like, well, that's why we were asking you if you're going to the gym, because we do know that some people who go to the gym take this supplement, and I'm like, nope, not taking anything like that. And then they said, well, the other time that they see it is with people who get a lot of sun exposure. So like gardeners and stuff like that may have this elevated level. And so, they're wondering, had I been out in the sun for any duration of time? Now, I didn't think that the amount of time I spent in the sun was like exorbitant, or I didn't feel particularly exhausted like that day. And so we narrowed it down, and the doctor said that it was their opinion that that's exactly what had happened, is that I had spent a little bit too much time in the sun and was just basically having a sunstroke and exhausted. And yeah, they had to pump me full of fluids and just like make me sit there and rest for a bit. And I was just like, what? And they said, yeah. And they said, listen, there are a lot of people who have a sun sensitivity. And when I was kind of explaining to them, what had happened, they said that they believe that I'm just one of those people who can't take a lot of heat. So maybe I should just kind of like stay inside and enjoy the air conditioning and not go outside sort of like in the heat, like the high heat sun, like midday sort of thing. Right. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But yeah, there are people who do take the supplement of that as well. So now, if I'm going to go to the beach, I try to go during like early morning hours, a bit later in the day, or if I go, I stay in the shade because I don't do well with the sun at all. So yeah, and that can be a very serious situation because it can mimic a lot of other things. So you can get like chest pains, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, high blood pressure. Like it can legit kill you. So yes, Leslie, you gotta be careful with the heat. So let's talk a little bit about this, Everton. I was so shocked and surprised when I heard on Saturday at some point that the storm was headed towards Louisiana area as a Category 4 storm. Like the original projections said that it might be like a strong 2, maybe a 3, as it reached the Gulf Coast yesterday. And so I thought, okay, that's strong, believe me. But I didn't think that that was going to be like destructive. And then by Saturday at some point, we're kind of monitoring it a little bit. And then I'm hearing the comparisons of Ida to Katrina 16 years ago, which I think we had mentioned on Friday that the timing was kind of interesting, or when we were doing our weather report, that the timing was a bit interesting. But my God, I was like, it's what? Heading as a Category 4 and at the upper end of a Category 4, which is crazy. So yeah, that happened. 100 and what was it? Hold on. I think it was 150 miles per hour. So Ida was 25 miles per hour stronger in terms of wind speed on Saturday night than Hurricane Katrina, who hit the same area basically 16 years ago on the same day. 150 miles per hour heading to a Cat 5 storm. Just absolutely crazy. So they're saying that this would actually be the strongest hurricane to strike Louisiana in recent memory, and a little bit of like history repeating itself. So they're saying that, New Orleans obviously was going to get hit or in the path. And we were just hopeful that this time the levees, which had been rebuilt, new technology, etc., would be spared. But folks, this was a catastrophic storm. Grand Isle, Louisiana, Alabama, all the way to Florida, they were all under different types of warnings. There was a storm surge warning in effect for a lot of areas as well, including the Alabama and Florida state line. It was just unbelievable. This storm, I was so shocked. Anyway, it has caused significant, I don't know how much damage yet, but as it continues to move inland, of course, the coast was under a lot of pressure. They were having up to 13 hours ago sustained winds near 120 miles per hour with higher gusts. So at that point, it was a Category 3 storm. And, just really ripping through the coastal area there. Wow. Some areas looking at 12 to 16 feet of storm surge, because again, it was hitting during what is considered high tide. 12 to 16 feet, folks. Morgan City, Louisiana, 8 to 12 feet. It's just crazy. Overtopping of local levees outside of the hurricane storm damage risk reduction system is possible. These were some of the reports that were coming in yesterday. So, yeah, it was over 1 million people without power. So I think that, it was just like, I was shocked when I saw what the storm had developed into. And again, this is just a reminder, folks. You go from a tropical storm to a major Category 4 storm in a matter of just a couple days. And this is what happens with these storms when they get out into the open waters, and they are able to just very, very rapidly intensify. So our thoughts and our prayers certainly go out to the people who've been impacted by this. I mean, we complain when we're without power. So you can only imagine when 1 million people are without power in this area. And I can assure you that without a doubt, those poor people would not be getting power restored as quickly as we did. We were complaining because some of us didn't have power 3, 4, maybe 5 days later. But, within the first 3 days, CUC had the majority of people reconnected. Unfortunately, that will not be the case, folks, for these folks. Just unbelievable and shocking. So I don't know if you guys have any friends or family in the Louisiana area, but, it's just crazy. I tell you. So we will continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers for sure. Yes, Suzette, it was like, whoa. Ida was nothing for us. She passed by. We were expecting a little bit more from her, and she kind of left us alone, which I'm thankful for. Believe me, you. But I think it just reminds us that hurricane season is nowhere near over. And in fact, we are heading into what will now be the height of hurricane season into September. So remember, for us, September 11th is a big day. We would be celebrating 16 years, I think now. Is it 16 or 17 years this year with Hurricane Ivan for us, which was a devastating Category 5 storm. And so we need to just remember to be prepared. Just be prepared. Yeah. So good morning, Felicia. Thank you guys so much. Alice says we here in the Cayman Islands are very fortunate. My thought goes out to those still in the path of the storm. Yeah, because the storm continues to move inland. So they're going to continue to have flooding and other such concerns. So listen, it's interesting how people see things, right? So I've heard commentary about, oh, we're such a wicked country, and that's why we're getting storms, and Ida's coming for y'all, and you're having more storms. And it's so interesting that people want to find an illogical reason to explain in 2021 what is a force of nature. We know what causes storms, and some years we will have more storms than others, and all of the things that logically contribute to it. The temperature of the water. So, our contribution to global warming, the things that we do to make that situation worse. These people don't ever talk about those things. They never focus on those things, but yet they want to blame a divine power for every single thing that's happening. It's like, you know what? God gave us this earth. We're supposed to be taking care of it. We do a horrible job, in fact, of taking care of it. And so what's really happening is that we are trashing Mother Earth, and we're increasing temperatures around the globe, and that is melting, what are they called? It's melting the caps, the snow, basically, in the North Pole. Yes. Glacier caps, right? And all of this is raising temperatures, it's raising water levels, it's doing, as an island that's already flat, we're going to be underwater at some point. All of these things are factors, and people are just like, let's just blame it on God. Let's just blame it on a divine power, because we don't want to take any responsibility for our, thank you, Tracy, polar ice caps. Yes. We don't want to take any responsibility for our part in what's happening around the world. And on the other hand, people also want to say, I heard somebody say, oh, well, it's because you guys had a gay pride parade why you're having so many storms this year. Yes, because that makes so much sense. If that's the case, then why did we get hit by Hurricane Ivan 16 years ago? What were we doing then that was so incredibly, offending to God that he decided to bring us to our knees? Why did we have an earthquake last year before the gay pride parade? It's like people just in their heads make up all sorts of reasons, that are quite honestly ridiculous. Because if God was offended, and I'm sure he is, but if he was going to respond in such a way, he would be offended by everything that we do. And trust me, there's enough fornicating, adulterous behavior on this small little rock, child abuse, domestic abuse, and all this other stuff that he would have been doing a lot more if that was the way that he was going to send a message. And it would be on a consistent basis. Folks, storms happen. It's a natural phenomenon. It's easy to explain why some of this is happening, quite frankly. And if we don't, prepare ahead of time, then the impact will be even that much more devastating on us as a people and as a country. I don't know, y'all. Sometimes I just have to shake my head at the level of conversation that's actually happening in the community. There are days that I just have to mentally check out, because I'm just like, y'all are crazy. I'm sorry, but y'all are legit crazy. The whole COVID situation, the vaccine situation, I don't even want to talk about it today. We are going to play a video a little bit later on, but people who are anti-vaxxers, right? And you give them, when you start talking facts and you start talking about, well, this is what the research says, and They don't want to hear any of that. And then the most interesting thing that's happening right now is they will say to you, if you're telling them something that they're opposed to and that they don't like, all of a sudden you're bullying them. And I have to tell you, I'm so incredibly offended by the misuse of this term bullying. Like, I cannot believe how much we abuse the term bullying and we overuse it, so much so that I am personally becoming desensitized to it, which I think is hell of a interesting, right? That when I hear the term bullying anymore, it's starting to have little to no impact on me because everybody's using it to describe every possible situation. Oh, I don't like how you're talking to me. You're bullying me. I was like, what? Do you people even understand what bullying is? But it's this oversaturation. And I'm not saying it's not an important topic to be discussing, but what is happening is people are so easily offended by everything, including the facts. Apparently, the facts are a big offense to people. And so, because they're offended by everything, they don't even, like, if you try to present an alternative or say, you know what, you're just wrong. What you're saying is wrong. It doesn't make any sense. Oh no, you can't tell me that. You can't tell me that my opinion is wrong because that's offensive. That you're bullying me now. I'm like, what the hell? What kind of world? Somebody sent me this last night. They said, thank you, Sandy, for continuing to put the science and the facts out there in CMR and engage with your viewers who don't trust the vaccine. This is so important for a community that platforms like CMR are used responsibly. I'm living proof of what can happen when you don't get a vaccine. The new MMR vaccine came to where I lived as a child too late for me. And as a result, I got mumps from community spread amongst children at age 5 and lost 80% of my hearing as a side effect, and I've had to wear hearing aids ever since. In some people, the mumps virus attacks the nerve endings in their ears, causing nerve deafness. So this is someone who had a experience with another virus, which was measles, And I can't help but wonder the people who are out there now, like, don't want to believe anything. Like I said, I read a comment yesterday that made me chuckle about how even the Spanish flu was a plandemic. I was like, oh my God. So you guys are going to go back 100 years ago and really expect to make this argument that the Spanish flu was all planned. And I'm just like seriously, when I hear this stuff, Suzette says ignorance, and that's in a word what it is. But I am legit flabbergasted to think that people actually believe these things. I'm like, what? Oh, say what? And the level of distrust and ignorance runs the gamut. I don't know if you guys saw that video that we shared last night out of the UK about this guy who had died. And on the one hand, he was a lawyer and, relatively intellectual intelligence about the law, at least. His wife had said that he had gotten a scholarship, to go to law school or whatever. And so he was seen to be a bright guy. But conspiracy theories can be smart people. I'm not saying that they're ignorant about everything, but they just believe, they want to believe. And all of these really bizarre and weird things that, quite frankly, make no sense at all to me. And I don't know, how it makes sense to other people, but there's just so many things that are just very, very bizarre to me. And so this guy ended up dying because he refused to get the vaccine. He didn't believe in it. He thought that, it was a hoax or whatever. And so, yeah, he paid for it with his life. And I actually had a friend say to me yesterday, well, it's her decision, it's her personal choice, and she would rather die than to get the vaccine. I thought, wow. And that's her choice, and that's not going to impact anybody else. And I thought it's so interesting that someone could think that their death has no impact on anybody else. I mean, to me, that's so selfish, first of all. Even if you don't have a husband or you don't have any children, you have parents, you have other people in the community who rely on you, perhaps, or who just love you and would miss you, and it would break their heart to see you die. So for someone to even say to me that my death would mean nothing to anybody in this world, and so I'm okay with dying because it's not going to impact anybody else. I thought, first of all, I thought that was incredibly selfish. That's one of the most selfish things I have ever heard in my entire life. When I heard it, I couldn't believe what I was reading. Like, oh, I could just die or be murdered, but I'm not going to take this vaccine, and that doesn't impact anyone. What? You honestly believe that your death impacts no one? If you believe that, that means that your life, whatever amount of time you've been here, 30 years, 40 years, whatever, has been for nothing, for naught. If you honestly believe that you die right now and not a soul would miss you, not a soul would shed a tear over you, no one would be like, oh my God, I can't believe this person died. I'm so upset. Like, it doesn't impact anybody else. Wow. I don't know what you think about the type of life that you've lived if you really believe that. I don't know. That kind of thinking, I just don't understand. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't understand it. So every day I'm engaging in conversations on this program. We have a whole entire factual campaign that we're trying to put out there. I spoke to a young lady yesterday who I must say is at least open to listening at some point, because I see a lot of the comments on social media, right? Everton reminding us about Guyana, Waco, Texas, and all these people who want to follow craziness and at different points in time. Remember the Nike one where they believe that aliens were going to come and like take them and all kind of stuff, and they all committed suicide or mass murder or whatever. I mean, there's so many people who are willing to believe a lot of foolishness in this world. And I'm sorry, but I am just not one of those people. And so I saw a post yesterday. There's a couple posts that really made me pause in relation to the whole COVID and vaccine situation. The first post was a young lady saying that essentially no one can force her to take the vaccine, or listen to this now, or the PCR test. This is so interesting. Because now the thinking is that, oh, your PCR test, like forcing me to do one or the other, is against my human rights. I'm gonna read this to you, and I want to break this down a little bit so that you can understand how far this way of thinking has gone and how far anti-vaxxers have gone with their thought process, right? So it's bad enough that someone says, I'm not going to take the vaccine. And you can imagine if you were an employer, right? What that means. But have a look at this. Anyone being forced by their employers to take this vaccine or take a PCR test every week must know that this is against their rights. No one can force you to push a stick up your nose, nor can they force you to take the jab by holding your livelihood over your head. I wish people would rise up against this madness. There should be class action lawsuits against these companies. Are they willing to take liability in the event that something goes wrong with either the dreaded PCR test or vaccine? So now they're equating the PCR test and the vaccine in the same situation, right? Or do you sign a waiver that frees them of this liability? That's what I thought. Whatever you do, do not quit your job. Let them fire you, then take action. And of course, just like everyone is a virologist and an expert, apparently everyone based on this is also a legal expert. an employment lawyer. And this person would be well versed to contact a lawyer and see exactly what their rights actually are. So what I found interesting with this, though, this is how I'm looking at the situation when I read this, right? I think to myself, right? So you're refusing to take the vaccine. You claim that that's a personal choice, right? You're putting other people at risk because this is a community spread disease. And one thing I want to say is I tell people, listen, I don't take what people say at face value. I double check and triple check, and I try to find the source for all sorts of information. So, even the premier has misspoke just a little bit when he said that this virus is just as contagious as the chickenpox. Well, it turns out it's not as contagious as the chickenpox because the chickenpox is highly, 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 highly contagious. It's not as contagious as that, but it's still ranked in the top, like it's pretty high up there. So it is considered highly contagious, right? And so there was an entire article on this. I can go into some of the details at another point if you guys wish. But this is what I do. I look up information. So if the premier says that to me, I don't necessarily take that at face value. I'm sure he's gotten that from somebody else, and maybe that was information that they had 6 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever. That was, leading researchers to think that that was the case, but it's not quite as contagious. And that research, I'm just trying to find the article that I have here, is pretty recent, right? So I'll find it and I'll get the numbers for you guys. But anyway, let me just see if I can find it. But anyway. So, but nonetheless, it is a communicable disease. It is highly contagious. It spreads very, very quickly amongst people. So I think this was just like 2 days ago. A new study has found that the Delta variant specifically is not as contagious as the, this is not the one that I was looking for. It's not quite as contagious as the chickenpox, but it is still like relatively contagious, right? So new information coming out all the time. And that's why you've got to keep on top of, the information that's out there. It's not that people are lying to you or anything of the sort. It's just that once new information becomes available, then you say, hey, now we see the emerging trend here. We see the information, et cetera, et cetera. So there's this whole thing called the rate of infection, right? So the rate at which people will infect on average other people. And there's a whole graph here. Let me just see if I can download this for you guys about what the rate of infection is for the coronavirus. Anyway, so when people say, it's my personal choice, I don't want you to talk to me about it, blah, 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 they clearly don't understand viruses. They don't understand the rate of infection. They don't understand contagion and how this works. They apparently don't understand any of this stuff. And I've found it here. Here it is. I'll share this link with you guys so you can go read it for yourself. And then you can look at the source documents of where this information came from. Right? So everybody says, oh, it's my choice. Okay. So it's your choice. This is what people believe. Now follow the logic. Help me understand it. It's your choice not to get the vaccine, which, like I said, still impacts other people. So your choices, despite them being a personal choice, still has a real world effect on other people around you. One of the reasons they were able to suppress things like polio, smallpox, measles, and all this other stuff is the high number of the general population that is actually inoculated, aka vaccinated against these things. If you had people, and we've seen it in recent years, in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a reemergence of some of these diseases that were pretty much wiped out because, again, in the US, you have this whole anti-vaxxer movement that has started before, COVID even came onto the scene. And there are people here I know who've been talking about vaccines for years. Oh, don't trust vaccines. They were given vaccines. millions of people, billions of people around the world have been given all sorts of vaccines that have saved millions of lives. And yet they tell you don't trust the vaccine. And so because there are pockets of people, even in the US, who are starting to not, they were opting out of vaccines, these measles, smallpox, they were having outbreaks again. And the doctors were like, come on, people. We almost had this disease suppressed, almost 100% suppression. So I hear people say, well, it's not 100% effective, so why bother taking it at all? And I say, you do realize a lot of these other vaccines that you've taken, they were also not 100% effective. But what happened was, because they were either mandatory, like in the days of smallpox, they'd come door to door and just give you the jab, right? You get it at the hospital, your kids get it at babies, all that kind of stuff. And no, they didn't have 30, 40, 50 years worth of research like the mRNA vaccine, which is interesting because you weren't really questioning those vaccines, but they have a high degree of efficacy because the vast majority of people have taken it. So even if you get 90% protection, if you have 97% of your population who's taken it, that's going to suppress that virus down to, being extremely manageable or looking as though it has disappeared. Okay, so stick a pin. Let's go back to this concept here, right? So this is what we're dealing with. So someone says, I'm not going to take the vaccine. That's a personal choice. Impacts other people. But on top of that, as my employer, you don't have a right. Listen to how far this logic goes. You do not have a right to tell me that if I'm not going to take the vaccine, that I must do something else, such as take a PCR test. Say, what? So you refuse to take the vaccine. Now the thinking, you see how broad and really unbelievably stretched this thinking goes. So now, in addition to that, you're also saying that I will refuse to take a PCR test because that also goes against my right. A PCR test, which is a mandatory test right now for people coming into this country. So I sat there going, right. So if you left the country and you were trying to come back, the government has in place that you have a PCR test. Are you now also saying that you would tell the government you're not going to take that PCR test and they must just let you back in the country regardless? Because that's the next level of thinking if you're thinking along this line, right? So your employer cannot dictate to you that you must take a weekly PCR test because you refuse to get vaccinated. And at the same time, you're also exposing your coworkers to a potentially deadly virus, right? Oh my gosh, I just cannot understand this logic of thinking. So I'm just flabbergasted. And you think that that's against your rights as an employee? How does that work exactly? Anybody care to explain this one to me? Because it is very, very bizarre in my mind. You're going to not take the PCR test. So you don't even want your employer to know whether you're positive or negative, which could protect other people in your workplace. Because we saw one of the critical things with this virus is knowing who is positive, contact tracing, and locking that situation down and isolating those individuals as quickly as possible. So now the next step is going to be they're going to tell you, oh, you can't put them in quarantine, you know, or anything else. And it's just like, it's a communicable disease, you know, we have to test people. So if mandatory testing is what's in place, especially if you're refusing to get the vaccine, how do you logically argue that that shouldn't be allowed? Can anybody explain that part to me? Because I'm that confuses me even more. And by the way, there's no real basis for this line of thinking that legally you can't be mandated to get a vaccine. Everton says, you see, the problem is with some people, they don't think for themselves. A company can fire you if you refuse to take a test or show your vaccine. And that's why so many companies in the US and our airline companies are telling people they either have to show the card or take the test. You can't come to work for the federal government mandates that all the military and all the federal workers will have to take the vaccine. So go ahead, don't take it, get fired, and see who, unfortunately, that gets cut off. But yeah, I am very, very interested to know, how they think in their heads that that's going to work. And I pointed out to someone that, take, for example, the US, because normally we equate America and the US with being like the greatest protection of democracy and individualism and individual rights and all this sort of thing. And even as far back as 1905, the Supreme Court has a decision that still stands today that mandatory inoculation, and this was in relation to the smallpox case, was completely legal. They can't, in my mind, they couldn't not come up with anything else, because the entire foundation of protecting the society. And see, this is the part that people don't get. The public's health is more important than your individual rights. You have individual rights, without a doubt, but your individual rights stop when they start to entrench and infringe upon other people's rights. So yes, you have a right to say no to a vaccine until and when it starts impacting the community's ability to suppress disease and to live and to function as an entire community. We're not here to protect only your individual rights. Imagine if that was the mantra by which all societies operated. And that was the overarching mantra. The overarching mantra is protecting the society first. And within the society, you have individuals. And yes, individuals have certain individual rights that are constitutionally protected. And we fight for those rights. That's why we have a constitution. That's why we have a Bill of Rights. But your individual rights have limitations. They're not without limits. They're not completely open-ended. So quite frankly, your rights end and stop once they start to interfere with my right to live and to be healthy in a society. Yes, Everton, that teacher. Let me see if I can find that case, because that case is a prime example of why it's so incredibly important for us to have things in place like mandate. I asked the premier this question, and I think it's coming. Are you going to mandate teachers, both public and private schools, should be vaccinated? So one teacher, an unvaccinated, unmasked teacher, again, they don't want to get vaccinated. They don't want a PCR test, and they don't even want to wear a mask. I'm just like, what the heck? I had one of them say to me yesterday, well, why don't you wear a mask as a vaccinated person? I'm like, I do. When I go into a facility, it says I have to wear one. And I have no issues wearing a mask. Like, what is that supposed to mean? So they want to put all of the burden of doing everything on the vaccinated people. So you get vaccinated, you social distance, and you wear a mask. I'm like, okay, I don't have a problem doing any of those things, because I'm trying to keep myself safe. I'm trying to keep my family safe, and by extension, other people in the community. So I'm like, what's the problem? Oh, because you're unvaccinated and you don't believe in anything except, a bunch of misinformation. You don't even want to wear a mask. I'm like, what? Are you kidding me? So an unvaccinated teacher in the US has infected over half of her students. This was a California public health official shared this on Friday. And again, they're saying that this is a perfect example of how easy it is to undermine efforts to protect children who are too young to be vaccinated. This is according to the CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky. The teacher came to work even though they had COVID-19 symptoms. You see, again, total selfishness. You have COVID-19 symptoms. Don't you go get tested and stay home until you know the test results? Oh, no. Again, no. We shouldn't be subjected to any rules in this world, right? So the teacher came to work, took off their mask to read to young children at a team at the Marin County Public Health reported in the CDC's report on death and disease. Y'all need to go read that report. The teacher assumed the symptoms were allergies, not an infection, is what she told the investigators. And in a classroom of 22 students, 12 became infected, including 8 out of the 10 who were in the 2 front rows. So again, this proves that importance of social distancing, right? And when you're that close to children, the vast majority of children, right there in the front row, within that 6 feet distance with her germs all over them. Okay, she took off her mask. School teachers are required and students are required to wear masks while indoors, but of course that's not what happened. They're not adhering to it. Desks are supposed to be 6 feet apart. Okay. The classrooms have portable, high efficiency particulate air filters, and doors and windows were left open. And it's still, all of that still wasn't enough to protect the children. Highly contagious, you see? Eventually, 27 people, including the teacher, were infected. Thankfully, none were seriously ill and all recovered. Thankfully, that could have totally been another situation. So imagine, right? Because then some of the children actually took it home and infected people in their homes as well. Children under 12 who are not eligible for the vaccine. So again, here's the facts, folks. 90% plus of people in the hospital with COVID-19 are unvaccinated. The age is now dropping. So it's not so much the elderly. And the reason why that is because a lot of them have gotten vaccinated. And so it's this resistance between the 30 and 50 years old. And that is why the age has dropped to that being the medium age now of the people who are hospitalized because of COVID-19. And it's getting younger and younger and younger. And don't think that the age, your age protects you as much as you would think, right? So, folks, it's just ridiculous how people are being completely selfish. You know what? Employers are going to fire people in Cayman because of this type of attitude. And I cannot believe them one single bit. I can't blame them. Grocery stores, they had to shut down, spend a lot of money disinfecting. And, everybody's like, oh, well, they're so greedy. They can lose money. Really? Do any of you own a business that, you shut down for a week, for 6 weeks, for 7 weeks, and still pay your staff full-time salaries? And the public is out there saying, well, let them shut down. I mean, the selfishness is just unbelievable in my mind. It just is, it's taken to a whole new level that for me is just absolutely shocking. Leslie says that their public health laws, once those are invoked, it's not a matter of personal preference or even responsibility. Yeah, just like during COVID, the government locked you down. Now, there's some people who argued that the way that they went about it, they invoked the wrong law to be able to do it. But guess what? The government has the ability in certain situations to tell you what to do, including stay-at-home provisions. Yes, they can tell you to stay at home because the risk of you out and about and walking around infecting people is simply too high. So travel into this country, even as restrictions, even as we move into reopening, will be contingent on people providing their either vaccination records or some sort of PCR test. I don't think that we said that they have to be vaccinated, but if this government was smart, they would make that a requirement of entry into this country. It's happening everywhere else in the world, folks. If you are a migrant going into the US right now, you can't get in. I'll tell you what the US government just did last week. You can't get in unless you're vaccinated. Okay? New Zealand has similar border control entries. So this was, I want to say, I think this was announced last week. So the EU has already rolled out mandates from February of this year for refugees and undocumented migrants must be vaccinated. But this was the US that just did this last week. I'll find the information on it. Before you can even go to the US, folks, you have got to be, I gotta find this information, but you now have to be vaccinated. So you're running across the border legally. Obviously, illegal people do whatever the heck they want, right? But if you're going across the border legally, then you must be vaccinated. And they'll give you the jab for free at point of entry. I'm sure of that. But yeah, this is what it is. So here we go. 4 days ago, the CDC adds COVID-19 vaccine to green card processing application. So imagine, this is in the National Law Review in case you want to go read it yourself. So now you're all virologists, you're doctors, you're MDs, and now you want to be employment lawyers and so on as well, constitutional lawyers. So here you go. August the 25th, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has announced that effective on October the 1st, the COVID-19 vaccine is included in the list of vaccines required for applicants to obtain permanent residency and refugee status. Take that. So Immigration and Nationality Act at section, they give you the whole long section they've added, sets out the requirements that in order to be found admissible to the United States as permanent residents, foreign nationals must demonstrate proof that they're vaccinated against vaccine preventable diseases. And there's a whole list of them, folks. So before I could get my green card way back in the day, because I used to be a green card holder, you had to be vaccinated. The people in the US not playing with y'all. And this has been a long-standing procedure, folks. This is nothing new. All they're doing now is they're adding COVID to the list of vaccines that are required. So you have to have your rubella and your whatever else vaccines, right? To be able to even apply for permanent residency. Okay, man, pay attention. You don't need to do the exact same thing. Yep. Here's one title. Want to live the American dream? Get the COVID-19 vaccine first. Yep. It's simple. The government can tell you. They can tell you what you have to do. You know, you don't get to dictate what all the laws are going to be. And whether or not you're going to follow them. Now listen, you can refuse to follow a law, but then there are consequences that come with that. So you can refuse to get vaccinated. You can refuse at this point, I suppose, to do a PCR test, and then the response to that, the consequences for that, you don't get to control. And this is where I'm having a hard time understanding how people think. So if your employer makes that a condition of employment and you don't meet the condition of employment, then yes, you'll be out of a job. It's just like everything else, folks. There are other things that have to be a condition of employment. Like you can't have a criminal record in some jobs for certain things. And if you do, you will lose your job. Simple as that. It's just amazing to me. You don't own the company, but yet you want to dictate what the policy should be for the company. You can't show up to, we did this story last week. Oh my goodness, my girl is so on it. I just sent her that. She's like, oh, we did that story already last week. I'm like, oh, CMR did. We're on the money. Anyway, folks, yes, these are the criteria for, living in a society where you do not live by yourself. Okay. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, it is what it is. Let me just play this facts versus fiction. We've been doing a series of these because, as that person observed earlier today, I do have an obligation to tell people whether they want to hear it or not, I suppose, the truth. If you don't want to hear it, then you do have the choice of not listening. But I have an obligation, a very important obligation, to inform people of the truthful position of what's happening. Before I play this video, let me make this point. And I know that there are people out there, folks, who are willing to listen to some degree of logic. So someone said, there's this thought process like, oh, they haven't found a cure for AIDS yet. They don't have an AIDS vaccine. They don't have an Ebola vaccine. They don't have a this. They don't have a that. As though because those diseases have been around for some time and because there's been no vaccine for those, right? Although they're very different types of diseases. But because there have been no vaccines for that, well, then, how is it that we can talk about mRNA vaccine? The mRNA technology has been around for 50 years, folks, legitimately 50 years. So AIDS hasn't even been around for 50 years. So put it in perspective. This vaccine is built on technology that has been worked on for some 50 years already. So these people don't research. They just want to throw stuff out there, whatever they think is going to make sense to people who don't want correct information. So somebody posted, well, why don't they have a vaccine for Ebola? Smart ass. They actually have 2 vaccines for Ebola. Now, don't you look pretty stupid right about now is what I was thinking to myself. So you post this up there to make a point like, ooh, they can't find a vaccine for Ebola. Now, be very clear here. Ebola is not something that has brought the world to its knees. It is a very highly contagious disease. And when they have Ebola breakouts, it is devastating because it has like a 90 something % death rate almost. It's going to kill you pretty much when you get Ebola, right? And it's very dramatic. You're bleeding out of all of your orifices and that sort of thing. So this person posts up, yeah, do they have an Ebola vaccine? And I was like, actually they do. There's 2. Y'all, before you open, there's that saying that before you open your mouth and remove all doubt that you are actually just a fool, try to think a little bit first, just a little bit. A simple Google search, girlfriend, would have prevented you from having an embarrassing moment on social media. There are 2 Ebola vaccines. And guess what? They come with all kind of side effects and they're not 100% and blah, blah, blah. And your point now would be what? Because you don't have a point because you're completely wrong. So I suspect the next post will be, do they have a vaccine for AIDS? Well, not every disease in the world can have a vaccine, believe it or not. We don't have vaccines for everything. Some things like cancers, you just have to treat once you discover that you have them, right? There's no way to prevent some cancers 90 something %. Well, a lot of cancers have a lifestyle factor involved. And we know some of the things that, another interesting social media post that kind of had me scratching my head was when this girl said, young lady, she's a mother of 2 children. There's been this thing trending over the weekend that I am vaccinated and here's why I got vaccinated. And I, take all these medications and I don't know what's in them. I eat all these foods. I give my kids food and I don't know what's in them. And so she then commented something like, let me tell you what her comment said, because it was kind of interesting. And again, I don't know what the point was that she was trying to make, but it wasn't very well thought through. And so she's kind of like taking a jab at people who are posting and resharing this, right? So she goes on to say, I'm vaccinated and no, I don't know what's in it. Many times I eat, drink, and give my kids post. So she's saying that post, okay. I'm like, actually, as a mother of 2 young children, you should know that there's a lot of things that you are feeding your children and that you are giving your children to eat, and you have never, and I would love for this young lady to challenge this and prove this, that she actually looks at the ingredients of what she is feeding and giving to her children. Because the truth of the matter is, how many of you have given your children hot dogs? I'm guilty of this. I've given my daughter hot dogs. Do you know that every single hot dog that you eat takes minutes off of your life because of how unhealthy a hot dog is? And the causal link now that is linked to different types of cancers. Were you aware of this? If you knew what the medical profession knows about hot dogs, you would never, ever give your children another hot dog. And guess what? The irony of it, because this mother posts everything she does on social media with her children because she wants to be mother of the century. I've seen her eating a hot dog, and I've seen her giving a hot dog to her children. So when she's trying to make fun of this, oh, y'all talking about, oh, I'm vaccinated and I don't know what's in it, because you're giving your kid, oh, okay. Yes, honey child, you yourself would have to know that you're giving your children stuff, you're feeding your children stuff, that you've never looked at the ingredients, or maybe you just don't care and you don't care if your children live or die, or, you know what I'm saying? I'm just like, I don't understand what the point that she was trying to make. Because a lot of us eat stuff and we take medications on a daily basis that have side effects far worse than this vaccine. Here's a point. I was having a conversation with a young lady yesterday, and I was saying to her, because, you know, they're like, oh, everybody's getting blood clots and da-da-da. And I'm like, I said, first of all, do you know which vaccines are associated with blood clots? Do you know it's actually not the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine? It's the Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccine. You see, these are small little facts, folks, that actually matter a whole lot. And when you're having this discussion, you should be dealing in facts, because the vast majority of people in this jurisdiction have taken the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. So what are y'all talking about blood clots for, when the vaccine that we have available to us is not the one that has showed some sort of a minimal link to an increase in blood clots? I'm just saying, if you're going to operate with facts. Okay? Now, let's take a pin right there. Have you, and I said to the young lady, have you ever taken birth control? If you have, you would have to know that every single birth control out there, that you're taking a tablet, an injection, and putting it in your arm, all of those things have an increased risk of blood clots and strokes. Now, this young lady is talking about, the increased risk of blood clots. And I said to her, do you know what a blood clot is and how a blood clot is formed? And she's like, no. I'm like, okay. Do you know that it is natural for your blood to do a certain degree of clotting? If your blood never clot, you would not be able to be alive, right? And women who have gone through certain things like having children, you know what happens to your body after you have a child? Any sort of major surgeries, right? The ability for your body to clot is really important, but you don't want to get these big uncontrolled blood clots that can then travel up major, arteries and stuff in your body and go to places like the lungs or the heart and whatever, because they can kill you. You can get an embolism right in your brain. And I said, let me think about this. I know people who've had embolisms. Publicly, they've discussed it. So let's take Alva Saku as an example, right? Alva Saku had some sort of embolism several years ago that almost killed him. And it started in his leg and it started to move. Well, Alva, had he not gone to the hospital, and had he not had a doctor that said, this is probably not what it is, but let me do one more test, they were willing to discharge him. Legit. Alva shared this story. Y'all can go and watch it on CMR. During the election, he talked about his near-death experience. And the doctor said, let me just test for one more thing. And that one more thing was the one test apparently that saved his life. And so we have people who die from embolisms in their 20s and sometimes even teenagers. People have clotting issues all the time, right? People die from these things all the time. It has nothing to do with a vaccine or anything else. I remember years ago, there was a young man, he was actually a Tyler, Karen Thompson's brother. A lot of you might remember the story. He died very suddenly. I think he was in his late 30s. I don't think he'd even reached 40 yet, but maybe early 40s, if that. But I really think he was in his 30s, right? And so he died of blood clots. And the doctors said what they think was happening with him is because he was a Tyler. He was on his knees a lot. And that position of being on your knees was creating these blood clots. And I'm like, what? That can create a blood clot? Well, yeah. It's why after you've had surgery, one of the things they tell you is you need to get up and move, even if you're in pain. Do not sit down or lie down in that spot, even if you're an invalid and you're in bed. You get up. They're going to roll you over. They're going to move you, right? They're going to put the compression stockings on you, on your legs in particular, because you're at high risk of getting a blood clot. And yes, Leslie, it's one of the biggest problems with birth control pills and the like. I remember when I was working at Maples and Calder, there was a young attorney, I'm not going to call her name. Thankfully, she's still alive. And she had a situation. She was only about 24, 25 years old. One day, I didn't see her for like a really long time. I would always go by her office and say, hi, how you doing, whatever. And then she was out for a while. When she came back, I'm like, you were missing for a few weeks. What happened? Where were you? She said, I was sick and I almost died. I was like, what? She said, yeah, apparently she developed a clot and some sort of reaction to her birth control. And I said, are you kidding me? You're 25 years. She was 25 at the most, right? An attorney, slim, a perfect health. Like you look at her, you can't see, not obese, no comorbidities. I'm like, what? You don't smoke? She doesn't really drink. I'm like, how the hell did you get? And the doctors were like, sometimes it just happens. Like they tell you, obesity increases your risk, right? So if you're on birth control and you fall into that obese, which a lot of us do, range, that will increase your chances of getting a blood clot. Smoking. One of the worst things you can do is be a smoker and be on birth control. And yet, I must tell you, I know a lot of smokers who are in birth control. They're not, oh my gosh, I'm not going to take birth control because it might give me a blood clot. In fact, they should quit smoking because that'll reduce their chances. But you see, people they make it up as they go along. Oh, I'm not going to do this and that now. But when I feel like it, I'm going to smoke, I'm going to drink, I'm going to do all these things that increase my chances of having all sorts of ailments in life. Even me, I don't smoke, I don't drink. Right? So I feel like, okay, I have that. I'm definitely not exercising the way that I should. So that increases my chances. I'm overweight. So that's a comorbidity for me, right? I take a high blood pressure tablet that has a whole list of side effects. But you know what? It's a balancing act. The list of side effects versus the alternative, which is I have a stroke because my pressure is out of control, right? That's the choice. So I will have to live with some of those side effects. And some of them are long-term. Some blood pressure medicines have been pulled off the market because they are causing cancers. They are doing stuff to your kidneys, all this other stuff. There's no tablet in the world, no medication in the world that you can show me, even natural stuff that you pull out the bush and you take that doesn't have some reaction, right? But you still take it because the good outweighs the bad. So when people talk about, well, I don't mind catching COVID because then I'll get natural immunity. Here's why that is a fundamentally flawed idea. Because if you catch COVID, the chances of you dying from it or getting seriously ill are significant. And when people talk about, wow, the burden that it's putting on medical systems and governments, the financial burden, the socioeconomic burden, just the burden of mental health that this pandemic has put people under. I can't believe that people don't take it as seriously as they should. Oh, yeah, I don't mind catching COVID. Well, that's fine for you. But when you catch it, if you hospitalize or if you spread it to other people that are then hospitalized and then die, or, you're taking up all the ICU beds, other people can't have access to those beds. Those other people are going to die because they can't get in there now that they've had a heart attack because you're in a bed. It's like, do you not really think about anybody else but yourself? Going back to this person who said, oh, I can die, nobody else, that impacts only me. I'm like, wow. The person who posts, oh, are they going to allow you to sign a waiver? Well, let me ask you a question, a very serious question, young lady. If because of your refusal to get a PCR test, because of your refusal to get the COVID vaccine, you catch COVID and you infect other people, will you then be okay with signing a waiver that says that you will not access any medical assistance? Because again, you're all about waivers and it's all about your personal decision. Would you sign a waiver that you will not take up a bed at the HSA or any hospital or seek any medical attention? You'll just fight COVID, let your body fight it because you want to catch that immunity naturally. Will you waive your right to burden the system in a medical sense? I'm just wondering. I'm just really wondering, because that to me is the logic behind it, I don't know. Dainty says now that God says to stay away from the vaccine. Where does God say that? Which verse of the Bible can we read that God actually said that? And has he said it with all vaccines? So I want to know, are you not vaccinated for anything at all? Have a look at this.
Do I worry about vaccinations? This one in particular? Yes, definitely. It's been rushed and imposed on us.
A vaccination takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years to develop, and this thing has been so accelerated.
Wouldn't want to get it. I felt like it was too rushed.
I think the whole thing has been rushed through too fast.
It kind of came really fast, like the vaccine. They made up one really fast.
It seems a little like the experts knew how this was gonna go. And that's because a technology decades in the making was finally able to rise to the occasion just when we needed it most. This research got its start around 1971. The first experiments in using mRNA as an actual vaccine started taking place in the early 1990s. So even though the Pfizer-BioNTech and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines were the first mRNA vaccines to be authorized, researchers had been excited about the potential of this technology and had been working on it for decades.
Under British law, no one can take another to treatment. Suppose you had a particular disease, or there was something I needed to prevent in you. I can't take you and carry you and make you get that treatment.
To still insist on the government and private employees mandating a vaccination as a means of employment is unjust. It is cruel, it is wicked, and it is illegal.
Keep in mind that several other vaccines that have FDA approval are already required in our schools. For example, measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox, polio, the list goes on, all things that are already required for entry into schools as a student because these were imminent threats to public health, and we had approved vaccines that suppressed all of those infectious diseases. And now we're at the step where the first COVID vaccine has full FDA approval, and in fact, we are already seeing a flood of new requirements. After the FDA fully approved the Pfizer vaccine for those 16 and older, the U.S. military sped up its plans to require it for all on active duty. New York City schools announced it'll be required for all teachers in that city, and that's just the start. The Department of Justice and EEOC said companies have the legal right to require their employees to get the vaccine under emergency use authorization. They said they didn't need full approval as long as they make reasonable accommodations for some with certain specific health issues or religious objections. So states like New York and California and hundreds of colleges and universities already required their employees to be vaccinated. And some of the nation's largest companies like Google and Facebook already required their workers to get vaccinated before full FDA approval. But many other companies have been waiting for full approval to counter any potential legal challenge or dispute over what the DOJ and EEOC have said.
The full approval, called biological licensing application, now allows them the ability to require vaccination and not be as concerned about lawsuits and other challenges that might arise.
Under the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, Article 7, which was established as a result of the Nuremberg trials, which says that we cannot be forced to be a part of medical experimentation.
The Nuremberg War Tribunal. So this is where they put a lot of German doctors on trial, along with SS officers and other German officials who killed Jews. The doctors in particular were put on trial because of the experiments they ran on Jews, oftentimes killing Jews by, for example, seeing how cold you could make a room before a person died, literally injecting motor oil into their veins to see what the effect was, doing all these really ridiculous and not very intelligent tests, but just to see the limits of the human body, and of course using Jews as basically guinea pigs.
I'm Dr. Janet Woodcock, Acting FDA Commissioner. The FDA has approved a COVID-19 vaccine after thoroughly evaluating data on its safety and effectiveness. The vaccine was authorized for emergency use late last year, and over 200 million people in this country have already gotten a vaccine. If you're vaccinated, you'll have strong protection against severe illness or hospitalization due to COVID-19.
So, folks, again, the evidence is crystal clear. Nothing is 100%, and yet over 90% of the people who are in the hospital right now fighting COVID and who are seriously sick are unvaccinated people. Like, that statistical fact alone should be enough to convince people that the vaccine clearly works, even if it's not 100%. 90-something% is damn good if you ask me. We have so much misinformation that is in circulation that I know that it is my responsibility, and I thank those of you who see it and who acknowledge that I need to at least get you to start thinking about the correct information that you should be accessing. So when I had that conversation yesterday with the young lady and I started asking her questions, because she's always sharing stuff as well. And she said, yeah, I don't know. And I said, what reports have you read? Like source documents, like have you read and understood about it? She don't know. She's just repeating what other people are saying. And then when we start talking about how blood clots are formed, and the fact that it's not these vaccines that we're using, and the fact that people die all the time from blood clots because, I got an uncle who has a blood clot and he took the vaccine. I said, coincidence and time doesn't mean cause and effect. She started to think about it and she's like, you know what, Sandy, you're right. Send me some information. Some people are more open to listening to facts than others. Some of you will never be open to it, even when you're in death's bed. You still don't care. Soka, yes, this story was put up after 1:00 last night. This was the last story I did before going to bed. Folks, this guy is a piece of work. We were the first ones to report on him last year, September the 6th. He assaulted 4 different individuals in one night during a drunken raid. So he started at a club with his friend. Then he went to the ex-girlfriend's house where his own 2-year-old child was sleeping in that house, viciously assaults her and a girlfriend that she had over visiting at the time, broke the girlfriend's nose. He threw her down on the coffee table, pulled her by the hair, beat her up. The girlfriend was so scared that she ran and hid in the bushes, right? Then the guy runs He leaves that location. He's not done for the night. Then he goes to another location. Okay. He went to another location, and then he turns around and does what? Beats up another girlfriend. Okay. Beats up another girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, my apologies. Pulls her by the ear, keeps her hostage overnight. Pulled her from the bathroom to the bedroom by her breasts. This guy is sick. Kicked her dog across the room, her puppy across the room, because when he walked in to the apartment, the puppy greeted him. Folks, look at this pretty face and know that this guy is the very definition of psychotic. He is a very sick person. Extremely sick. But this is what we have roaming around in our communities. And unfortunately, he's not the first person of this caliber. We saw one, I was telling you guys about him the other day. He went and got married to a nice little girl, and already he's beating the shit out of her. Hair puller, breast puller. He bit her on I think he bit her on the nose or the ear as well. This guy has some serious issues. When you read the file and listened to the prosecution case on him, he should never be let out of jail. He is a dangerous individual. And yet, I'm sure he'll probably just get maybe a year in jail for all of the offenses. So he's found guilty on Friday of 9 out of 11 offenses. I think they kept 2 as alternate offenses or whatever. Those were ABH with intent. He's a disturbed person. Regardless of how the package looks on the outside on this one, he is really a disturbed person. Warn your children to stay away from him. I know we have a very transient population, so a lot of expats will come into this country, beautiful people from overseas, and they don't know the monsters that are living here amongst us. This is a face that nobody should forget, because he has some very serious issues. He needs to be in deep, deep therapy, folks. I don't know how he's going to get it, but in prison, they need to immerse him in some professional therapy because he clearly needs it. His name is Darren Kennedy Ebanks, only 32 years old. And can I tell you, if you think this is a one-off incident, this is not the first time. He was part of the national football team, y'all. Hello. Reality check. This dude is dangerous. He is sick. He has issues. Keep your children away from people like this. Adults, warn each other. Here's another picture of him. Such a shame because he looks like a handsome little fella. He beat up a male friend. Well, he pled guilty to that. And I found it so interesting that he would plead guilty to beating up the male friend, but all of the women that he beat up that night, 3 separate women, he wouldn't plead guilty to those and made those go to trial. And of course, the jury took no time at all, an hour and a half, which is like nothing, to find him guilty of 9 out of the 11 offenses. He is disturbed in more ways than one, folks. The women had bruises, laceration, a broken nose. They were transported to the hospital. For her broken nose, she required additional treatment. I mean, they were legit terrorized by this man. And the thing is, he knew that his own child would have been at the residence of at least the first home. What kind of monster, drunk or otherwise, I don't really care, goes and assaults people knowing that in the very next room, a 2-year-old is asleep? It takes a special kind of person to do something like that. They were so afraid. He took the phone, so he left them no way of communicating, but in his rage, he had actually dropped his own phone. So they were able to take his phone and call 911 for help. And until the police arrived, they went and locked themselves up in the bathroom because they were afraid that he would return. He would realize that he didn't have his phone. He would return for it and probably kill them. That's what they were thinking. He broke the glasses. He strangled the second ex-girlfriend, broke her glasses, kept her phone for the entire night, wouldn't allow her to, obviously the glasses were broken, wouldn't allow her to put in her contacts. She couldn't even see really what was going on. Attacked her dog. Again, animal abusers, don't take it lightly. Before this got to trial, when it first came to court, Magistrate Foldatz commented when the accused appeared before court, and he said, it sounds like you were completely out of control, and if true, you've terrorized these individuals. That's the only word. His victims have said that the assault has left them scarred for life. They don't even want to leave their homes, they're so afraid. But they mustered up the courage to go and testify against him. Now, remember the other guy I was telling you guys about the other day? What is his name again? Hold on, let me just tell you. His name is Brandon Beckett, I think, right? He went and married this young lady. I don't know how he convinced her. And already within a short period of time of marrying her, he has assaulted her and gone completely ballistic. The word on the street is, despite him going completely ballistic on her, right? They just got married, I think in August. Was it August or no. Oh no, he updated his profile picture. What a joker. He updated his profile picture August the 25th. That's because apparently, despite him beating the shit out of her, he's hoping to convince her not to press any charges. So at first she made a police report and she was going to do all this kind of stuff. And listen, people talk, right? Now she is back and coming backwards. Folks, these guys don't change. Like seriously, this guy has some issues. I'm sitting here looking at his social media account, right? Talking about the mind games and the manipulativeness of what is going on here. What is Carlos talking about? Carlos, you might be a disturbed person, but this actually isn't about you. So unless you're the person that has done all these things to women, what are you talking about? Carlos, unfortunately, you have a reputation that precedes you. And we know your stalking of Grace and all those issues over the years. Why are you even on here? May I just ask you, what are you even doing on this platform here today? Because you have a reputation, like I said, that definitely precedes you. So here he is. He changed this on August the 21st. This is part of the psychological games. Lovely girl, but she's going to be in for a time of her life. This guy did something similar. Assaulted a woman, kidnapped a woman, went to jail for years for it. Somehow he finds this lovely wife and convinces her that the other woman deserved the beating that she got and deserved him kidnapping her and holding her hostage. And y'all exposing young boys to people like this, monsters like this. Is something wrong with you people? Listen, this is a community where we know what these guys are all about. This dude can't hide. He has a criminal record a mile long for assaulting women. And now she has been victimized by him just the other day. And it looks like all will be forgiven. Wow. Unbelievable. Well, we'll keep you posted on how well that works out for her, folks. Sad situation. Carlos, I'm going to do you a favor and actually block you because you know there's a reason why you can't return to the Cayman Islands. you know the stress that you put Grace Geely and her family under. But I think you're schizophrenic or you suffer from some sort of mental health issues that you really need to address because your delusions are quite interesting. So I'm going to do you a favor and I'm going to block you from this platform because I'm doing you a favor now, right? Because I'm not Grace and I would deal with you in a very different way. What she needed to do to you years ago, she went through and tried to follow the procedure and let the police deal with you. And the police seem to have very control over someone like you who can terrorize people from a distance, or you think you can. Carlos, go and get yourself some professional help. People don't know. People might be listening to this program, right? So he believes he's actually married to Grace and that she's his wife and that she's had his baby and that she's hidden this baby from him. The man is delusional. And I don't know if enough people have just not told him that he is delusional and he needs to get professional help. But Carlos, yes, child, I'm going to do you a favor and I'm now going to block you. Malicious prosecution, my ass. Folks, thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Carlos has been blocked for his own good. We'll be back here tomorrow for another interesting show, I'm sure of it. You guys, please have a safe day. If you are a woman and you're being terrorized by the men in your life, domestic violence, violence in public, violence in private, please know, yes, Soka, that's him. Get help, child, please. Some people beyond help, you know. Some people just don't want help for their delusions and their schizophrenia and whatever else they're suffering from. But I want to send a message out there to all women that you don't have to put up with this. You don't have to put up with people like Carlos. You don't have to put up with people like Brandon Beckett. You don't have to put up with people like Darren. You have options, and it starts with trying to do it the right way, going to the police, making your reports, testifying when you must. Because there's so many people like, oh, I don't want to testify. What's that going to do? What that's going to do is set a record of what type of person this is. So when I say to you that someone like Brandon Beckett, like I can go online and look this dude up on CMR, and I can tell you that he has a record and was in jail for 3.5 years for rape, right? And assaulting this woman, 24 years old, 26 when he was finally convicted to 3.5 years. Raping a woman, threats to kill, assault, ABH, wrongful confinement, intentional harassment. You can at least Google this man now and see that he is dangerous, that you should want no part of someone like this. Be forewarned. I don't know where you get tidbits from, child. I don't even know. Be forewarned that there are dangerous men living amongst us. They may look pretty on the outside, but do not be fooled, folks. Prevention is better than cure. And so the best way for you to protect yourself is to stay away from these men and whatever snake oil they're trying to charm you with. It will never end. You will not get a fairy tale ending with people like this. That's my recommendation. We live in a society where we need to look out for each other. Maybe Mindy didn't know, but apparently she knew because people were telling her, don't marry this guy. Don't get involved with this guy. But she was buying, oh, it's the victim's fault. Just like Darren, he blamed those women, saying that they attacked him. You can imagine. You break their nose, you throw them on a coffee table, a girl had glass in her arm, all kind of stuff, and it's their fault. They provoked him. Really? Don't believe the lies, folks. Men like this have no respect for women. They degrade women. Trust me when I tell you there's a reason why. He would plead guilty to the one incident against the man, but not guilty to all 3 assaults against the women? Because he has an issue with women. And if you can't see that from the assault alone, right? I mean, take note of the fact that he beat up his friend at a bar, a man who could at least probably fight back a little bit, although he was on such a rampage that didn't do much good. And he's willing to plead guilty to that assault, 4 assaults in one night. So he pleads guilty to that. And the other 3 women, he then blames them. You're the reason why I beat you up. You see how these guys think? They're not playing with a full deck of that, Stay away from trouble. Don't go out there seeking out men like this because it doesn't end well. Run when you see them coming. Don't walk. Don't let them charm you with nothing in the world, because I don't know what they're working with in terms of charm. But don't allow it to work on you, because you will live to regret it. And one of these days, that same man, he's ready to beat the shit out of you, Mindy. One of these days, he's going to take your life. You understand? You see how he lost control the other day and beat you? For what? Because you went out with friends and he can't control you? Even after you married him? Even after you go out and take out big time bank loan to give him a truck he's not even working, but he must be driving around a brand new shiny truck that you got to pay for? People talking on the streets, girl. Let this man go to save your own life. Folks, we bring you the cold hard truth here in this program, and it is what it is. You might not always like it, but we endeavor to tell you the truth. Because at some point, the truth will set you free. We'll see you tomorrow morning, folks. Have a beautiful day. Stay blessed. Use the common sense that God gave you. If you believe in God, he gave it to you for a reason. If you don't believe in God, well, you still got common sense. So just use it. Okay? Have a blessed day, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.